Hello, my dear friends, how are you? I hope I find you all in good health and safe and sound. I'm Arith, and today I'm going to share with you a little adventure in search for an archaeological monument on top of one of the mountains in Sintra, Portugal. The monument I'm looking for is often designated as a tholos, a plural tholoi, which in classical Greek literally means a round house. However, it isn't a typical dwelling for the living, but rather for the dead. This type of structure also goes by the designation of beehive tomb due to its domed aspect, which is indeed a type of domed tomb, which is a particularly important development in burial architecture. Let me just show you a very quick picture to better illustrate this, thanks to Wikipedia, which is basically a good source for pictures at least, and little else. Don't get your hopes too high. I knew there was a Tholos type of tomb up here in the mountains, and I was already guessing that it would be in pretty bad shape. But it was worse than I thought, sadly. Still, an interesting finding I wanted to explore as an archaeologist, but this time on my own, as this particular monument has been neglected for quite some time. The great majority of archaeological interventions on this particular monument were in the 19th century, conducted by amateur archaeologists and military engineers, so I already knew that I was about to find a pretty damaged structure. But I shall leave that for later on in this video. This is one of those moments we can say that it's not really the destination that counts, but the journey. And indeed, it was a very pleasant and a nice adventure. The terrain here is very bumpy, with steep slopes, the way is always up, and no real even ground to rest your wandering feet. There are some openings in the surrounding forest which you may feel like climbing, as it seems an easier course, but please don't be fooled, as these openings were cleaned out quite recently due to rock slides after storms, so the seemingly easier course holds many dangers, and you might be crushed by a tree or a boulder or swallowed by the earth, which of course might be a totally fine way to go for pagans, sort of returning to the earth immediately, whether you like it or not. Very cheerful. On your way up the mountain, you will find other neglected structures, not as old as the one we are looking for, of course. And here's some stairs from a later period, but we are not going that way. Actually, I cannot help it, and I must explore. On the side of the stairs we can find little troll heads popping out of the earth, filled with moss. Alas, the way is closed, it was made by those who are dead. No, actually, some boulders fell off and there's no way to continue that. That happens quite a lot around here, but nothing interesting to find here anyway. As I said, it's really about the journey. Some parts are more difficult than others, of course, and you have to make do. Using a dried up course of water facilitates the climbing in some parts after winter is done, for instance. The way up is certainly a challenge, but if it comes too unbearable, just remember that the way down will be easier, far easier. After all, since Sir Isaac Newton discovered gravity, you can now roll down the mountain in no time. Since these forests don't have a lot of human activity, the ground is filled with plants and flowers, like a beautiful tapestry of green and purple and white, inviting you into this fairy realm where you will probably fall down a hole, most likely, and never be seen again. Sintra Mountains are filled with unexplored caves, but also man-made tunnels for escaping, most of which are yet to be properly explored. So small wonder there are so many folk tales around here of enchanted women, fairies, moving shadows and ancient wraiths, with the single objective of ruining your day. There are plenty of mushrooms over here, and I find them absolutely fascinating. Were I not an archaeologist, I think I would definitely dedicate my time to mycology. But only study those mushrooms that make you fly, since Isaac Newton ruined it for everybody, and now we must find other ways to levitate. Well then, we have reached the top, finally. The place is called Alto do Monge, which means an elevated or lofty place of the monk, sort of hill of the monk, with a height closer to 500 meters. It is the third highest point in the whole mountain range. And what we are looking for is right here, this absolute disgrace. Pretty bad shape, as you can see, with many of its stones scattered all across the surrounding forest, but it's still perceptible at least. This is a tholos, as I've said, which are typically burial structures from the early and middle Chalcolithic. These are normally collective tombs, normally with an individual at its very center, which more often than not was the very first individual to be placed in here, sort of the founder of this place. And normally the other human osteological remains are found around the first individual, at the very center. A tholos is made with small and medium-sized stones, its foundations built with larger stones, and as the monument is being erected, as it goes up, the stones will become smaller in size until they form a dome. They are usually structures with a vestibule, as you know it, a vestibule or an antechamber or a hole or a sort of a lobby, let's say, next to the outer door of a building. This vestibule is very interesting, actually, as far as we are able to understand the religious conception in these contexts. This is one part of the structure just before entering through the corridor. Symbolically speaking, it's already a place outside the reality of the living, but not yet within the realm of the dead. A place that stays in between two realms, two worlds, and indeed the chamber itself and its domed aspect suggest a world of sorts, a symbolic representation of the realm inhabited by the dead, by the deceased. So the vestibule was usually where people waited just before entering the place inhabited by their ancestors, a place where they would leave offerings, conduct ritual, ceremonial consumption of food and drink as well, a place of gathering and a safe boundary between the living and the dead, but still reaching out to the ancestors. And of course there is a corridor that connects to the chamber, facing east or more often than not southeast, or in this context, in this part of the world, presenting a connection with solstices. The chamber is circular with vertical stones and covered with a false dome, and the stones are arranged in a circle. This monument that we have here is about 4.5 meters in diameter and almost 2 meters in height. Although in this state, it is pretty difficult to determine, and the artifacts that are found in these monuments are curious, at least in this part of the world. They are usually artifacts linked to everyday life, polished stone, chipped stones, ceramics and sets of votive objects made for the sole purpose of worshipping the dead, but also used in funerary ritual. Most of these artifacts are white in color. This is the most striking feature at this period in relation to the cult of the dead and the artifacts associated to them. The color white signified death, so many white artifacts are found in these particular contexts, usually objects made of limestone but also of bone. But of course, in this particular case we have right in front of us, the artifacts have been taken a long time ago, obviously. That's one of the greatest problems with amateur archaeology, especially of the 19th century, in search for treasure, and then the structures are completely destroyed. Or, if we are lucky, they are badly damaged, which in turn destroys many evidences and information. This bad boy over here is called Tholos du Monge, the Tholos of the monk, which is isolated on top of one of the highest elevations of the Sintra mountains in Portugal, erected in plain Chalcolithic between circa 2300 and 2000 before the Common Era. So this is an old boy with over 4,000 years of age. It was built at a time when the defensive systems of some villages and towns were being strengthened and new types of settlements were being created or being erected. The ones built on hills precisely to take advantage of the natural landscape as a defensive mechanism. As this was a time of indeed great economic development and there was the necessity to protect the settlements and the goods from other settlements. The climate of conflict increases, there is an abandonment of villages in low relief areas, agricultural and pastoral activity is reduced, There is a greater dedication to hunting, and the populations become more individualistic. As far as I was able to research, this monument was later reused already in the late Iberian Bronze Age, around 1800 before the Common Era. However, it is something that I was unable to really determine, as it is only possible to study the structure that is here before us, so badly damaged as you can see, and it is definitely a structure which at most was erected 4,500 years ago. So, my dear friends, I do hope you have enjoyed this little sort of video log about my little adventure up the mountain. I want to give a special thanks to all of my patrons, without whom this adventure would not be possible. But of course, I also want to give a special thanks to all of you who watch my videos, subscribe to this channel, give a like, and even share my videos, which is quite important. There's been a lot of love and support these past 4 years since I have started a YouTube channel. I have found important friendships as well. Overall, it's been a great experience. So, thank you, my dear friends. The love I get from you is a reward, I think, far greater than I deserve. Well, certainly far greater than what was found here on top of the mountain. But as I said, it's the journey that truly counts, just like everything else in life. And good company as well, obviously. Thank you so much for watching. See you on the next video. And as always, thank you for today.